Silicon Flatirons is a research center at Colorado Law School. We work with students to give them the tools they need to pursue careers in tech, law, policy, and entrepreneurship.
When I started, Silicon Flatirons was an experiment. It was me and some students putting on a few conferences without really a plan where it was going to go. My initial motivation was because I didn't believe you could have impactful policy discussions unless you brought people together across different disciplines. Silicon Flatirons Center has given me an image of what a team can look like.
And it really made Boulder into a location that was seen as on par with DC or Silicon Valley and other places around the country that are leading thought centers in the field of law and tech.
What's excited me the most is to see it grow, but not only just grow in terms of the number of people attending our different events, but growing in terms of the different areas that we have been involved in.
When a law student says, I've got a passion for understanding the intersection of technology and law, but where do I get started with that? What Flatirons provides is a position to actually go angle for a job during their second summer where they're actually going to get to be involved directly in setting tech policy or in advocating around tech policy.
The Silicon Flatirons community is incredibly unique in how close it is and how people are willing to band together to move conversations forward.
It's one thing to be sitting in a room by yourself reading articles, and it's very much another thing to actually be sitting at a table talking to somebody about their daily experiences of trying to navigate compliance with a complex new law.
We're all a community of friends who enjoy spending time with one another.
The people we engage with through here are very much thinkers and thought leaders, so they're contributing to whether it's our strategy or our resources in really meaningful ways.
Silicon Flatirons has changed the dynamic between Colorado law and the surrounding community as well as the national community.
One of the great joys of my profession is talking to people who are really early in their careers and helping them get excited about what you're excited about.
We get the types of people in the room that everyone thinks should be talking to one another, but often are not.
I get to work with students, I get to work with attorneys, I get to work with policymakers at the intersection of all these issues.
Students are first and foremost, so everything is generally student-driven.
And it is centered around people who are wanting to engage with students.
I've seen students come into Silicon Flatirons just having a little interest in it, in year one, and by year three, they're passionate about it and they found their career.
And I think that really helps the standing of the university more broadly, and it also attracts lots of really interesting and talented speakers.
I think what I'm excited to see happen with Silicon Flatirons in the next 5, 10, even 20 years is for it to blend continuity with change.
It's not enough to have smaller conversations anymore. The world is all connected, and Silicon Flatirons is going to reflect that global nature of the internet as we move forward into 20 years in the future.
I hope it continues to operate with the same spirit of experimentation, of adventure, of seeking out new challenges that we've done over the first 20 years.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Amy Stepanovich, and I'm the Executive Director of Silicon Flatirons, and I'm so honored to be able to welcome you here with us today virtually. I can't wait till we can be back together in the same room, when I can connect with you one-on-one and hear more about what you're thinking about or what you're working on. It's been a great inspiration to me to see that sense of shared community that's present at every one of our events that I attend, and I'm so glad we can continue in that tradition, even when we're not together. If this is your first Silicon Flatirons event, I welcome you. Silicon Flatirons has a mission to elevate the debate around technology law, policy, and entrepreneurship, to spark tomorrow's conversations through intellectually honest programming and community engagement. I want to thank our staff, our speakers, and our full community for helping to inspire and execute the programming that you're going to see here today. And a special thank you to our supporters. It was so important to us to be able to provide the programming you're about to see free of charge, so that it could be accessible by anyone, regardless of any hardship they may be facing. We're so appreciative of our supporters' generosity, so we can continue to serve our full community. If you enjoy today's program, and you want to help us create more like it, and if you have the means, we would welcome a donation to Silicon Flatirons today. Every dollar you make has a long and lasting impact, and if you'd like to help us, you can go to siliconflatirons.org and click on the donate button. Thank you again so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoy today's program.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the value of pro bono work during the pandemic. I'm Lynn Hansen. I'm a partner at Moy White. I work in the business section. I specialize in franchise and trademark law, and I am a graduate of CU Law School. So pro bono work. The Colorado Rules of Professional Conduct state every lawyer has a professional responsibility to provide legal services to those unable to pay. And as most of us learned in law school, I think, pro bono is actually short for the Latin pro bono publico, which means for the public good. Right now, more than ever, during this pandemic, we are experiencing very high rates of unemployment, closures of schools, restaurants, stores, businesses, churches, all kinds of gathering places, and social distancing in an effort to contain the virus. To prepare for this program, I contacted a couple of pro bono service directors in Colorado and confirmed that the need for pro bono services is even greater now in the areas of housing, bankruptcy, family law, and elder law. And furthermore, these pro bono agencies really believe that the need for pro bono services is going to increase exponentially in the coming months. So the more of us lawyers who can get out there and help the public, the better the world's going to be. And moreover, the value of pro bono work is not just to the recipient of the services, although that's, of course, the main goal, but it's also to the attorneys providing the services. Studies show that a good way to reduce stress for anyone is to help others. And so this is a great service that we can do for others and also have benefit to ourselves. There is a list of websites that you could use to sign up for pro bono work that is going to be posted, or maybe it already has been, on the Silicon Flatirons website under the tab Resources. So if you're interested in signing up, please go there after this program, and we will hopefully be able to help you get connected to some pro bono work in Colorado. So today, speaking, our panelists are Miko Brown. Miko is a partner at Davis, Graham & Stubbs in the trial group. She is also the co-chair of the firm's Diversity and Inclusion Committee and the founder of the firm's Women in Leadership Lecture Series program, which focuses on professional development for women. Also joining us, we have Kevin Bell. Kevin is a senior associate at Kilpatrick, Townsend, and Stockton. He specializes in patent and trademark litigation, representing clients in the telecommunications, computer manufacturing, and entertainment industries. Kevin is also a graduate of the University of Colorado School of Law. Go Buffs. And we have Rachel Shapiro as our third panelist. Rachel was a last-minute substitution, by the way, so good for you, Rachel. We really appreciate you jumping in here at the last minute to help out. Rachel is an associate at Perkins Coie. She focuses on strategic mergers and acquisitions with experience in private and growth equity transactions, divestitures, debt financing, capital markets, and corporate reorganizations. Deeply committed to pro bono work, Rachel has conducted internships with the Colorado State Public Defenders, the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU School of Law, and Lambda Legal. She has also been involved in various public advocacy matters, including 14th Amendment protection for LGBTQ persons and efforts to reduce mass incarceration. And before we get started, I just want to let the audience know we do welcome questions. If you could please type those questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. I'll be monitoring the questions throughout the program. So I'm just going to throw out questions, and whoever wants to answer, please feel free. Our first question is, I'm just going to ask you to talk about a pro bono project that you are maybe currently working on or you have worked on in the past, and what you learned and enjoyed about it, and reflect on whether that work could be accomplished during a time like now when we are practicing social distancing. Or do you know of friends or colleagues who are doing pro bono work now during the pandemic, and are there any changes or obstacles to doing that work during a time when we're being encouraged to stay at home and not meet in person?
So I can start. This is Miko. Hello, everyone. I'm a lawyer, partner at Davis Graham and Stubbs, and a mother of 3 very active attention-seeking kiddos. So I am all about killing as many birds with one stone as possible. And that really applies to everything that I do, including pro bono work. So the way that I've been approaching pro bono work is really an extension of that. How do I perhaps combine business development, mentoring, community service, and my passion, what gets me out of bed every day, into pro bono work? And one of my big passions has always been small businesses and promoting small businesses. I actually went to Berkeley, and my favorite thing, or one of my favorite things about it, was there was a city ordinance where you couldn't have any chains within 1 mile of campus. It was all focused on small businesses. And to me, that's been really one of the sad things about this pandemic, is the strain that it has had on small businesses and their ability to continue to operate. So for my pro bono efforts, I've really been focusing on those small businesses who've either had to lay off a lot of people or reduce the size of their legal departments, and see how I can assist and perhaps become sort of an extension of their in-house legal department to help them through this, while their legal departments have really reduced in size or they've laid people off. So a couple of the projects that I've been doing for these small businesses have been partly healthcare related. One recent project I did was finding out whether or not patients have a right to their tissue specimens, whether or not they can use it to perhaps donate to try and fight the pandemic, help for research, or whether or not the hospitals and doctors and nurses who take those specimens ultimately have the right to those specimens and to control them. So that's one of the projects that I just recently completed, and I found it to be absolutely fascinating.
I was going to say, that sounds really fascinating. Yeah. Kevin or Rachel, anybody else want to jump in?
I'm happy to jump in. One of the things I've been doing, and I do think this kind of work is certainly applicable in a COVID environment, is volunteering for a habeas corpus case. I'm working with some other attorneys in our Dallas office on a habeas corpus appeal before the Fifth Circuit for a prisoner who's facing the death penalty. A female prisoner is facing the death penalty. And that work has been eye-opening in terms of seeing the lack of resources available for those who have strong claims to lack of representation at the trial level. We know how difficult it is for those indigent individuals to have a proper defense, particularly in a capital murder case in the state of Texas and in other states that have the death penalty. And it's the kind of work that you can do sitting at your desk. We've filed appeals, dealt with motions. Luckily, we had a chance to argue our case before COVID-19 happened, but those appeals are happening on a weekly basis. Those are kind of oral arguments are happening on a weekly basis, and those are still happening by Zoom, by exactly what we're doing here today. So that's been a very rewarding experience, one that I would highly recommend. And then I would also put a plug in, we'll talk about, I'm sure later, for immigration work. We have a wonderful, wonderful program here in Denver. Remain, RMIAN resources are as part of the materials that are being made available, they have a number of pro bono projects available, and I'm sure I'll talk about that as we go forward here.
That sounds great. Thanks, Kevin. Rachel, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so I have tend to use pro bono projects as a way to get involved in areas outside of my general practice, which is, mostly transactional work. During law school and in summers between law school, I really wanted to be, I guess, more involved in public advocacy and then public interest work, especially in the criminal justice space, which doesn't really have anything to do with my current practice. So I've used, I guess, pro bono work as a way to still get involved in areas that I truly do care about. For example, I just finished a project working with the Advocates for Human Rights, writing their UN report on recent developments on the death penalty, which was totally 100% able to do at home, my home office during, quarantine, just because it's mostly writing and reviewing and looking up country information. So that I found to be extremely rewarding, just in, when the world seems like it's falling apart, when like everything is kind of like people are losing their jobs everywhere, like it's pretty devastating, all the things that are happening. But at the same time, writing a report on developments in the death penalty really is a little grounding, because you're like thinking like, there's a lot more happening in the world and a lot more people who need help, outside of your own kind of whatever you're perceiving your misfortunes to be, which I find to be very gratifying, at least in my private practice, where I don't always feel like, of course, I'm eager to support, paying clients, but it is really gratifying to be able to provide that level of support to people and organizations that truly need it. But yeah, I found that a lot of research related projects are able to be done during COVID. Also, as Kevin just mentioned, immigration work is like in high demand right now. It's like almost overwhelming. So that's another area where I'm really excited to get involved in. I haven't started it yet, but I am about to get involved in a asylum case involving a transgender woman from either Honduras or El Salvador, where there is significant need. So it's definitely, pro bono work is definitely a way to, I guess, feel connected to areas that you maybe don't get as much experience in the corporate world.
Oh, absolutely. Broaden your horizons, broaden your skill set, especially in a time when, work may be, at least in big firms, might be a little light in your area, especially if you're in the business section like I am. Yeah. So does anybody have examples of how attorneys can team up with other attorneys in their firm, or ideas about that, or in corporate legal departments, as Miko was discussing, or even with friends at other firms to perform pro bono work? I haven't thought about this before, but it seems like this would be a great idea and might give, partners and associates an opportunity to work on matters together. Any ideas on how, we can work across the firm and across areas of practice to do pro bono work?
So I would say, it's a piggyback off of what Rachel said earlier, but I think this has really created a great opportunity for people to get outside of their comfort zone and perhaps go outside their areas of practice. And part of that has been, at least for me and some of the other attorneys I've been working with, means, reaching out to a partner or an associate in a different practice area. In your firm you normally don't have a chance to work with, but you find that area of law interesting. And so one recent example that I have is privacy. I am not a privacy lawyer at all. But certainly COVID has presented a bunch of numerous challenges for businesses dealing with personal information. What can you use personal information for? What are people's rights to privacies with respect to that when you're trying to flatten the curve or establish, contact connections and things of that nature? So I reached out to a woman in our privacy department And otherwise I wouldn't have had a chance to work with her. And we have started to put on some pro bono programs for clients or potential clients who, again, just don't have the resources and the manpower right now to make sure they are complying with these ever-evolving regulations. And so it's a way to really provide, I think, a valuable service, and at the same time get to know somebody else within my firm who I never would have probably worked with otherwise.
Agreed. And as the co-chair of the diversity committee at my firm, I think it's also a great way to reach out to other diverse attorneys at the firm and bring them in on a project. Because the more people you can reach out to and touch base with, especially in these days when we're all sitting at home, and I am sitting at home even though the background looks like I'm in my office, the better off we all are, right? I mean, a sense of community is more important to create these days than I think it ever has been. Kevin, do you have anything to add to that, or should we move on?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to add to that. What we've noticed is with a larger firm, with a larger footprint that our firm has, is that there's lots of need in places that you would never expect. We have a large office in Atlanta, and they're desperate for work down there. And we have teams across offices that we reach out to say, hey, I've never worked with you before. You might be in our group, but I just haven't had that opportunity. This is a great opportunity to do so. Within my own office here in Denver, we have a number of patent prosecutors who would like to be involved in cases that may end up at a court hearing, a grandparent adoption that may require you to appear in front of the court to complete the process, but they're nervous about doing so, having done nothing but patent prosecutions and at most spoken to an examiner. And so they often reach out to people in our litigation group. I partner with a number of patent prosecutors to provide that experience and knowledge on litigation and provide that comfort level. And I think it's a great thing. And then I know oftentimes we'll reach out to clients as well to see if they have an interest in joining us on something where they don't have to do a lot of work. Fill out some forms, meet the client, just be part of the process and be part of the support. And that's proven to be very rewarding, both for us in terms of developing our relationship with our clients, but also for the client representative who they don't have that opportunity to give back to the legal community in the way that they will want to. So I highly encourage people to reach out to their clients to see how they're doing and say, hey, I've got an asylum project here, needs a little bit of work, needs a little bit of assistance. Would you be interested in joining me? And it's a great way to check in with your clients and be part of giving back to the community.
Yeah, that's great. Reaching out to folks within your firm and your clients. I think everybody's looking for that kind of communication and cross-working opportunities these days. Okay, to build on this theme of value, I'm just wondering if anybody has any examples of value, and I don't mean monetary necessarily, but the kinds of practice building value and personal gratification too, if you will, that you might have gained from doing pro bono work, both as a lawyer and personally. And I think this can also extend to value to your firm or your legal department, or wherever you happen to work. Law students even doing pro bono work, I know they add to their skill set and can add to their resume by adding skills and doing workshops and things like that during school. So I think it cuts across a wide spread. Anybody want to volunteer to go for that one?
Sure. Go ahead, Rachel.
I was going to say, last year I worked on, most of my practice area focuses on basically just mergers and acquisitions within the private equity space. So I don't really have any experience with IP or privacy or anything like that. But I took on a project last year, rewriting the terms and conditions and privacy policy of a charity website. And it really gave me a lot of tools, at a very basic level. Just doing one project obviously doesn't make me, any sort of like expert in the field, but going back to, deal documents and merger agreements and purchase agreements really gave me a better understanding for the IP provisions that were in those agreements from a separate deal perspective. So I found it to be really useful, at least in my practice area, to expand beyond like what I was usually doing through pro bono. Because for a paying client, there's no way that I would be involved in any of that, type of work, just because the IP people would be involved in it. So I think that it is important, for your own growth as an attorney to be able to kind of dabble in these areas that maybe seem like they're not related to what you're doing, but probably are at the end of the day. At least can be weaved into making yourself a better, well-rounded attorney at the end of the day.
And I can piggyback off of that too. I keep on piggybacking off of Rachel, but I'm a litigator, and so public speaking is something that's very important. But as a junior trial lawyer, you really don't get that many stand-up opportunities to speak. Those are generally reserved for the more senior lawyers. So I did a lot of pro bono work for the Public Defender's Office and for the ACLU. And through those opportunities, I was able to conduct hearings and client interviews. And I had so many more opportunities to get stand-up time than I otherwise would have. So again, it's just killing those multiple birds with one stone, doing your passion, sharpening your skills, and also simultaneously giving back.
Agreed. So well, maybe Rachel can chime in on this one. If you were an associate, which Rachel is, and you want to do more pro bono work, or maybe this should be Miko and I answering this one. What is the right way to present that project to your supervisor and engage the rest of the firm? What would be a good way to approach somebody, I guess, with the idea of doing the pro bono work? Have you had that experience, Rachel?
Yes, I have. Yeah. So in both firms that I've worked in my experience, there's been a general coordinator who's been dealing with the majority of the pro bono assignments and sending around emails about what's available. But I have found that oftentimes there's a lot of opportunities that aren't listed there, and it's kind of up to you to reach out and make yourself available and make it known, and not necessarily rely on somebody reaching out to you to ask if you want to assist. I think that if you have a certain project that you want to work in, or a practice area or a space that maybe you'd like more experience in, it's really helpful to specify that specifically when you're reaching out to partners or coordinators or whoever is in control of that flow. And if you have certain ideas about organizations that you'd like to work with, presenting that to partners is really important. I think that as an associate, at least at a firm, I can't personally bring in a matter by myself. But it's in all of the partners who I've worked with in my pro bono matters have been super receptive to ideas that I have had, or certain areas that I wanted to work in. But you do have to take that step and reach out yourself, I think, if you really want to get the projects that would benefit you the most.
And I'll jump in with Rachel. And from our perspective, a number of the larger projects that our Denver office is doing has been associate driven. Our partnership with Remain, for example, was, if I have my history correct, I think I do, was driven by associates reaching out to the organization and saying, we would love to help you. We hear that there's work. What can you tell us about your projects that we can then bring back to the partnership to educate them as to what this would be? And from my perspective of partnership, was always open to great new opportunities, a great way to be visible in the community and to give back, and partnering with a organization that already has infrastructure in place to get these cases to you to help you clear conflicts and to ensure that that these are the types of cases that would work well for you is a great place to begin. So the state of Colorado has a number of programs. The grandparent adoption program is one where they reach out to law firms saying, we can bring cases to you, and associates should be out looking for that. And that's my perspective, is just find an organization that you want to help and bring that information back.
And I'll say one of the best pieces of advice that I got when I was an associate, and that I see my associates use really successfully, it's called make your ask a give. So instead of asking the partner or the firm or the organization, will you support me taking on this pro bono case, you explain to the partner or the supervisor why taking on this pro bono case is going to ultimately help the organization. So a few of my associates have come to me with pro bono projects and said, I would really like to take on this pro bono project because it's going to make me a better speaker, it'll make me a better researcher, I'll be able to support your practice better, it will bring recognition to the firm. And so when you sort of pitch it in that way, you're not asking for something, you're showing how it's going to actually benefit the people you want to help you. I find that's been very, very successful.
And great to put the onus on the associate in that way, and you know, have them see it from a different perspective. I think that's fantastic. And of course, it also helps the firm if your firm is has made the pro bono pledge. I don't forget the official name of it, but the Bar Association, of course, wants you know, firms, especially larger firms, to make a commitment to pro bono work from its attorneys in a certain minimum number of hours, which I don't recall off the top of my head, but I know my firm has been involved in that in the past and continues to be. So I'm hoping, you know, most firms take that to heart, especially now during this time. So if anybody, like I said before, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to write them in the Q&A section. I'm not seeing any at this point. And we will, you know, pitch them to the panel. So where should people turn if they need pro bono assistance? We do have the list of resources, and it is posted, and I think everybody's got a link to that PDF on their Zoom. Yeah, somebody posted it in the chat room, so everybody should have a link to that. Generally, if people need pro bono assistance, I guess my response would be, you know, turn to your local bar association. Any other thoughts on that for the panel?
I mean, I will say, at least as far as my clients are concerned, and you know, everybody is working with a reduced budget and everybody is really struggling to get the work done. And so for me, that's been one of the first places that I've turned is to my clients. You know, how can I help you? What areas do you need some additional assistance in where I can be of use? And it's also a great way not only to reach out to the client, because there's always, you know, a risk of out of sight, out of mind. So I think it's a way to get in contact with the client, find out how you can add value, really emphasize that you are part of their team, that it's not just about billable work. You really are there to support their business. And at the same time, it's a great way to get to know their business even better, or perhaps a different facet of their business. So I think that's one area that you can go. I'll also say another area, although they're out of school now, are the law students, because I know, for instance, at least DU has a pro bono requirement for their students to graduate. And so that's something I've been doing recently as well, before COVID hit, was to reach out to the law schools and find out which students and which pro bono opportunities have they been focusing on, and seeing if there's a way to partner with those students, which is another great way to develop talent and, you know, potentially fill the pipeline with future recruits.
And another just non-traditional way to do it is just ask for your family and friends, ask your your colleagues or your clients, if they're involved with, for example, charitable foundations or other work, they often would need, especially in these reduced budgets time, a little help reviewing a contract, or for those who are more IP focused, maybe they have some trademarks and they need someone who can help them either get a new trademark through or to work with the renewals. I represent a couple of foundations in that regard. They produce some materials and they have some trademarks associated with it as part of their charitable work, and they need that work. And that is certainly something that you can pitch to your firm as not only is it providing a good value to the community, but also it's assisting with your particular skill set. And for me, both of those opportunities came directly from, talking to family and friends and saying, what are you involved with? Are you seeing what charities you're involved with? And then that kind of led naturally to a conversation about, hey, I can help. So, don't forget those all those Zoom conversations you're having, those happy hours you're having, to maybe reconnect with someone, or maybe find a way to help out in a non-traditional regard.
Yeah, all good points. Even neighbors, these days I've never talked so much to my neighbors as I have in the last couple of months. Just walking around the neighborhood to get exercise and noticing more families and having casual conversations with them at a distance, of course. You're learning more and more about, at least I am, about the folks around me, and having the opportunity to provide, advice, informal advice, and assistance to them. We have some elderly folks in our neighborhood who may need help on wills and things like that. There's always somebody who's got a question about legal when they find out you're a lawyer, it seems like. So, anyway, well, what types of pro bono cases are we seeing a rise in right now? Like I said, I did reach out informally to a few directors of pro bono services before, in preparation for this session, and they were seeing some increases in requests for assistance with housing, with landlord-tenant type issues. I know I believe there's supposed to be a moratorium right now on evictions, at least for residences. But I know quite a number of my clients, are having issues with landlords for business locations, and I've done a lot of participating in phone calls with franchise systems recently at very, very reduced fee or free, to kind of weigh in on a town hall kind of meeting, answering franchisee questions about how do I deal with this landlord, how do I let them know that I'm either closed or almost closed. How do I negotiate some kind of reduction in rent, and what is the best way to approach them? Done an awful lot of letters and notices to landlords and trying to help people negotiate that, because of course landlords have their own mortgages to pay and things. So looks like we've got a couple of questions. I'm going to throw these out here. Let's see. First one is, how much time do you spend weekly on pro bono work? How do you ensure you're getting your primary job and pro bono work done, and ever had conflicts related to time in that area? Good question. Any takers on that?
I'll take it. In terms of conflicts, I've only run into it a little bit, mostly because I do litigation, and then I often take pro bono that has litigation. So occasionally you have a deadline that run up against each other. But that's also part of the process of deciding whether to take a case, is to truly evaluate it and see how much work you think it would be. If you think it's going to take 200 or 300 billable hours to complete, do you have the time and the availability to fit that in with the rest of your work? while also making sure that both your paying clients and your pro bono clients are both getting a high value of service. So that comes down to that pre-analysis. How much is it going to be? How many people can I partner with on it to keep the amount of work done? And then making sure, just like almost anything else, managing your calendar and making sure that your deadlines are not going to be crushing in the end.
Yeah, and this is Mika. I will say that, communication and teamwork, I think, is the key. And whenever I take on a new pro bono work, or an associate or someone else approaches me about a pro bono project, we have to have a very detailed conversation and line up what are the deadlines for the pro bono case, what are the deadlines for the billable work that I have, and just make sure that we've got team members who can backstop if things arise. That's extra challenging in these times of working from home, but it's also, I think, a great opportunity to really connect with your team. And it's a great opportunity, and I've seen it, for the associates to really step up to the plate, demonstrate their value, demonstrate their leadership skills and readiness to really run and manage cases. So a couple of the associates I've worked with have said, look, we are going to own this. We're going to own this pro bono project, and to the extent you can help us, great. But we will make sure that we are communicating with each other. We will manage the people under us and make sure all of the work is getting done. And it's been a great leadership opportunity for them.
That's great. Okay, second question. Are firms willing to engage in issue/impact litigation pro bono? Or is the focus more on the types of individual client services we've discussed so far? I know my firm has done some of litigation in terms of recently, some of the litigators, I wasn't directly involved in this project because I'm not a litigator, but they drafted an amicus brief to the Supreme Court in the case that Phil Weiser just argued in front of the Supreme Court last week? I've lost all track of days, so I think it was last week, in the unfaithful elector case, about the elector in Colorado who voted for the candidate of his or her choice. So in that, that was a pro bono project, and that was something that was purely issue driven and not an individual client service. Do any of the rest of you know of any such projects that your firms have engaged in?
I can answer that. Yeah, so recently, I think I mentioned before, we were working with the Advocates for Human Rights on their UN reports. This past one we just did was for recent developments in the death penalty, which was grueling work. It was very depressing, but it was very, very gratifying to be able to work on something that was eventually going to end up at the UN. But I think that firms are, in general, at least the firms I've been at, have been very receptive to impact litigation and just issue and advocacy in general, just because of the good it does for the broader community. It's really important to engage in these issues, and I think that firms are really willing to devote attorney time to helping out with these particular issues. One of the most this actually wasn't at a firm, but when I was a law student at a clinic, I was working at Lambda Legal, and we did a lot of work on Obergefell in 2015, the same-sex marriage case, and we had a lot of assistance and help from firms providing assistance for the responses that we were doing in that case. So it's definitely something I think that firms are really willing to work on. It's definitely not just individual client services.
And I'll say, if you're with a firm a little bit larger that are now partnering or bringing in a partner who's primarily devoted to pro bono, our firm has a partner dedicated to pro bono work. That's the best person to go to if you want to do issue, because they are in the position to vet those kind of issues to see if that would be a problem for the firm, and then also to help marshal the resources that you want to do. I know that our firm has done some work for Native American tribes on various issues over the years, and that has been coordinated out of our central pro bono partner. So if you're fortunate enough to have that at a firm, definitely reach out to that individual if you want to do something more than just individual client services, which I have found extremely rewarding, but I can see the interest in something more global than a single client issue.
And this is because same experience with Davis Graham. I think we've done, I don't know if it's the majority, but an awful lot of asylum and immigration type cases, which have nothing to do with any of our practice areas, but because it's seen as such a valuable endeavor that the firm has really supported it. And we too are very lucky. We have a partner who coordinates our pro bono work and who sends out monthly, here are some pro bono opportunities for anybody who wants to get involved. And rarely do they have anything to do with our business. They're almost always outside of it.
Great, yeah. Thank you all. Our next question is, what ideas do we have for connecting with pro bono work for attorneys who are not associated with a large firm or connected to that kind of law firm infrastructure? I think that's a great question. And in addition to just contacting pro bono services directly, I know at my firm, I think if someone approached us outside of the firm who was interested in partnering with somebody at the firm on a particular kind of project, especially if it was an area where one of us had expertise or even just interest, that we would certainly be open to partnering with someone outside the firm for that purpose, if they were, certainly willing to help shepherd that work. And I don't know why not, I guess is is the bottom line for me. So I think, that would be something, if you heard of someone at a firm doing, a project that you wanted to get it, involved with, and you were interested in, and it could be a benefit to both parties. I don't see, why reaching out to somebody at the firm, how I imagine that might be really welcomed. If it took more resources than you could marshal, in whatever area you're working in or environment you're working in.
Yeah, and I'll
go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, I will. We're well aware of what Davis Graham has done with Remain, and it's some amazing work that they're doing. And they're an organization, for example, that if you aren't part of a firm but you reach out to them wanting to do work, they have an amazing collection of mentor attorneys who do immigration work on a daily basis. This is their job, but are more than happy to help you, send you resources. So if you have an interest in it, contact some of these organizations that are in the sheet that was published. And again, I will happily recommend Remain for the amount of great work that they do and for their infrastructure that they provide to not just attorneys that work in firms, but other attorneys and other organizations on that list. I'm scanning through it earlier today. They have mentors as part of that. And that's probably your best way to get involved if you don't have a firm infrastructure. Find an organization that you can get that assistance and feel comfortable with the work.
I'll just say too, in my experience, rarely does any organization turn down free work or offers of help. And, that's how I got how I did my pro bono work for the Public Defender's Office and the ACLU. Before I even went to law school, I just wrote a letter to the managing director at the time of the ACLU and wrote to the head of the Public Defender's Office at the time and said, I'm really interested. I want to be a trial lawyer. I would really like an opportunity to get experience and to help you out, and I'll work for free. I got calls back very, very quickly. And so even if you're not with a big firm, I think if you find an organization that interests you, reaching out like that and offering to help them on your dime, I think there's a good chance you're going to be told yes.
Yeah, and looking to the law schools also, we've got two great law schools in the metro area. A lot of times they have great programs as well. And as Miko said, nobody ever seems to turn down the offer of free labor. So that's also an opportunity to work with folks who have similar interests. Okay, let me see. We have another question. If a pro bono applicant is not close to the poverty line, but in financial difficulty because of business bankruptcy, is that someone that would qualify for pro bono assistance?
So I'm not aware of any sort of legal definition of, people who can get pro bono work or pro bono services and who can't. And maybe I'm totally wrong on this, but I've always sort of evaluated based on, does the organization or does the person have the resources to pay for the legal work that they need? And if the answer is no, and like I said, a few of the companies that I've been doing pro bono work for, under normal circumstances, they could absolutely afford it. But because of COVID, they can't. And so to me, I'm classifying that as pro bono work. Maybe I shouldn't be, but I am. So those are my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think there's different kinds of pro bono work too, and different pro bono services might have different criteria. But I agree with Miko in terms of helping out clients who suddenly find themselves in a terrible spot. I consider that pro bono, and I would treat them the same as I would treat a formal pro bono request, I guess, from a service. I'm sorry, Kevin, I think I talked over you.
Oh, no worries. Oftentimes, if you work for a firm, oftentimes you'll find that they have criteria either published or easily accessible about what would qualify. But if you're if you know someone who's in that situation where it's a business bankruptcy, just bring that issue to the partnership at the firm and explain why you think this could be helpful, what you're going to get out of this. As Miko was saying much earlier, like what can this bring to the firm and what can this bring to your own individual practice? And maybe it will be approved, maybe it won't, but this is a great time to ask for those opportunities.
Absolutely. And I'm just wondering if anyone has ever had or knows of someone who's had, I guess, a pro bono case that actually led to a new paying client or realized other long-term benefits for the firm of investing in pro bono.
So I can take that. I've actually gotten a few clients that way, where they were small businesses, just starting to launch, didn't have either a legal department or really sufficient funds to pay for some work that they needed to get done. And I volunteered to put together a team and to do pro bono work. And as a result of that, it took many, many years. This is not instant gratification by any stretch. But as the businesses grew, I knew their business inside and out. I was there when the doors opened and really knew them very, very well and knew their business models and the people. And so when they were finally in a position to give billable work, I was first in line. So it has resulted in some paying clients. I still do pro bono work for them, but I also do paying work for them as well.
Yeah, I've had a few colleagues who have done some pro bono patent prosecution work that did eventually lead to, as the company was able to capitalize itself and to start making money, they were able to convert them over to a paying client. It's hard to get approval to do pro bono patent prosecution work just because of the amount of time and effort that goes into it. But if your firm's open to doing so, or they see it there potentially is that kind of long-term possibility that the company will grow and can become a paying client, there's no better way to engender yourself to that client than do some do some work for them upfront as on a pro bono basis.
Agreed.
Jump in there.
Rachel, go ahead.
I was just going to say too, not, I mean, in a slightly different vein, I also think that paying clients in general want to see that you are doing pro bono as a firm. I think they really appreciate the work that gets done. I know there's a ton of awards out there and lists of what firms are doing what, and I think that it is a point of pride to be included within that space. And I think that paying clients in general expect you as a firm to be providing, quality pro bono services. So I think that also is a way to get, I guess, paying work from doing pro bono, and also, recruits too. Like, I know that at least, I'm a fourth year associate, so I didn't graduate yesterday, but in my search for firms, I definitely considered what kind of pro bono work, firms were doing, and how seriously firms, took their commitments to pro bono. So I think that in general, it makes, you as a firm stronger.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm wondering if we could just end by having each of you talk about your most valuable pro bono experience, personally speaking. I know mine was probably from getting involved with a Colorado Lawyers Committee request for some trademark work. It was anonymous. I didn't know who I was getting paired up with, and turned out to be a small nonprofit that I ended up sitting on the board of for years, and not only made friends, but contacts, and it turned into a wonderful experience that kind of deepened my connection to some nonprofits in the community, and was a really great thing for me. Anybody else?
I can say a while ago, our firm took on a Hague Convention case for the return of two children to a parent in Australia. The other parent had brought them to the United States against the wishes of the other parent and against court orders. And the Hague Convention provides a way to bring those back, but it requires a full hearing in front of a federal district judge. We had two days worth of hearings, live hearings, in front of Judge Krieger. That was my first cross-examination. That was my first real closing, had that opportunity. And I believe that was 6 years ago, and I'm still speaking to the parent in Australia. We're Facebook friends, we follow each other. I see how the kids have grown. They were babies when they were returned back to Australia. And so it was incredibly gratifying to me as professionally in terms of cross-examination, hearing, federal district judge, but also now I can always look at those pictures and say, like, I was able to help that person. So.
And I don't know that I've got a case or a matter that is the most rewarding, but I think the experience, I would say, that I found the most rewarding, because when I do pro bono cases, generally speaking, I team with a female or diverse associate and really let them run with it. And the growth and the development and the leadership that I have seen these people take on, and what amazing attorneys they have developed into, in part because of those experiences, to act as, a first chair of a case when you're 2 years out of school. And then, last year, one of those people was up for partner and made partner, and a large part of the opportunities that she had came from pro bono work, to show that she was ready to be a partner litigator. So to me, that's been the most rewarding, is just really using it as a sort of vehicle to mentor and to promote diversity and inclusion in our firm.
I can go next. I guess it's not technically pro bono, like maybe just because it was a clinic I did as a law student, but my work as an intern in the Colorado State Public Defender's Office was it was highly gratifying and really eye-opening to see the systemic issues with our criminal justice system firsthand. I think it's really impacted my entire life and how I view the legal system, and my duty, I guess, as an attorney to really give back to the community. So I would highly recommend anyone who's looking to do pro bono work to get involved some way in the criminal justice space.
That's great. Thank you all very much. Unless we have any other questions, I think we're just about almost at an hour, so I think we can probably wrap this up. Thanks to Silicon Flatirons for putting this on and asking us to participate. It's been fun, and appreciate it. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Take care.
Bye.